Thank you so much. Yeah, hi, I'm Dina, and my talk is a bit geeky, you have to tell me in the end, or maybe Greeky. So, how to travel the sea safely with json when there are no Argonauts. So please raise your hands who has ever heard about CSAF. Yes, great. So why did I choose this geeky, Greeky talk? Because I believe that some stakeholders I'm regularly dealing with, so I'm working for the Federal Office for Information Security, the BSI in Germany. I entertain myself with paperwork, with legislation, with CSAF, with vulnerability management, with project management, and many, many other things I will talk about in this talk. So what I regularly experience is that especially for higher hierarchy stakeholders, like in the European Union, information security is a myth. So that's why I believe that I work at the interface between mythology, governments, and politics. And that's why I like to compare Greek mythology with technical information. So the journey of the Argonauts is one of the most famous Greek mythologies or stories. And the Argonauts were sailing off to fetch the golden fleece. I believe we are also here on a journey, and I will take you on that journey. I'm Captain Dina today. We will go through findings, we will go to the reporting of findings, we will go to disclosure processes, and also the acknowledgements. So what I present here is my story, is my experience. It's not necessarily the opinion of my employer. And it's not necessarily anything that anyone else has experienced. I don't know. So let's get started. So for me, the golden fleece is not a ram, you can see there. For me, the golden fleece is the publication of machine-readable or machine-processable security information, so-called security advisories. But let's start with the heroes of our journey, because unfortunately, I'm not the real captain. I'm the captain for this talk today. But json, so the right-hand json is actually the captain of the Argonauts, and on the left side, this is my hero for this talk today. So what you see here is a security advisory, and this is a CSAF document. What it is, I will talk about that during the talk in some few minutes. But what is very important, you have a document level metadata, you have a product tree, and you have vulnerabilities. Why is vulnerabilities located here? Could be somewhere else, according to this guy, but it has a certain meaning because Pelias usurped the throne in ancient Greece. And this was a violation against everyone, and he was afraid that anyone could take revenge. So he visited an oracle, and this oracle told him, you have to be careful, one guy will appear with just one sandal. And because json carried Hera, the godmother, across a river, he lost one of his sandals. Maybe that was also inspiring for the life of Brian, I don't know. But hey, sandal, so please remember the sandal. So this is his vulnerability, and that's why I chose this picture and this analogy. What I wanted to tell you here is that a JSON file or a JSON advisory, a CSAF advisory, consists of this document level metadata, the product tree, and the vulnerabilities. This is the minimal information that you can give, and we will go into that later. So because we are on a ship, we have a sailing route. We have to navigate through things. And what you see here is the rise, the increase of vulnerabilities plotted over the years. So 29,065, neither my monthly nor my yearly salary, maybe it's yours, hopefully your monthly salary, your monthly income. It's the number of vulnerabilities that were reported in 2023, and this is our sailing route. So whenever a vulnerability occurs, you have to deal with it. You have a huge manual workload. We heard that in previous talks. You have to assess it, you have to evaluate it, you have to do risk assessment. Happy days, 80 vulnerabilities a day, go for it. I don't think it's manageable without automation. So this is the sailing route for us today. This is how the Argonauts, JSON, has to travel along the seas of universe. So let's start with a finding. So I'm a cat, I'm an animal person. This is actually one of my cats. His real name is really Mino. Let's call him Minotaur, the cat bug, the cat bull. He is 85 kg, oh sorry, 8.5 kg, but feels like 85. And he is a new finding. And he randomly targets laptops. And Minotaur is one of the ancient Greek bull, let's say, bosses or enemies. So when you want to report Minotaur as a new finding, or I want to report Minotaur as a new finding, I don't know whether there are disclosure processes existent, whether there are policies, incentives. So basically, when you find this cute little guy as a bug, you want to report it to me, you don't know whether I like disclosure processes, whether I like to stick to certain policies, whether I really love to hear about vulnerabilities or not. And this is the same with manufacturers. So one way to communicate this would be a security TXT. And the question is, do you have a security TXT, or how many people actually have one? So the security TXT is actually a file format that helps you in vulnerability disclosure processes. It was already published as an RFC 9.11.6, so it's not a standard, but it contains standardized contact information. It is in a defined location, very easy to implement. It is human and machine readable. So not a big deal for basically all of you. But I told you there are some stories, some personal experiences. So what happened? The Federal Office for Information Security was talking to big enterprises. And also our president found out that rarely any vendor, any manufacturer, any enterprise had a security TXT. So they agreed on that at least like the DAX 40 enterprises comply to that, implement one, and publish one. And that's why, although this RFC was there, we published a cybersecurity recommendation to use security TXT in order to provide security researchers with an empathetic security contact, with clear disclosure processes, with clear policies, in order not to be afraid to report anything, in order not to be persecuted or put into jail, or being afraid to talk to anyone whenever you find a bug like Minotaur. So I already talked about these vendors, and let's move on with the journey. We pass by different islands, and I can tell you that many vendors live on islands. And you see that here. Those islands can be really friendly, like the island of Cyzicus. Sorry, I'm not Greek. So they invite you, they are happy that you report vulnerabilities, but on the other hand, there are manufacturers or vendors like harpies. They look nice in the beginning. I mean, look at this nice winged woman there. But they start to attack you afterwards, and they tell you, we never had any vulnerability in any of our products, we never have any problems. So what you end up with is like Jason, the Argonaut. He entered various islands. Some of the islanders really invited him to parties. Some of them really tried to fight him, and it ended in exhausting discussions. What I believe and what I recommend is a coordinated vulnerability disclosure. But for some people, a CVD looks like this, being on the eye level. It's still a fight. For me, it's not a fight. For me, It is a meaningful dealing with findings, with reports, with empathetic, taking information empathetically and welcoming any security researcher reporting findings to make things better, to make the world a safer and a more secure place. So when we look at the analogy with the Argonauts, you have seen the sailing route, 80 vulnerabilities a day, islands, harpies. Some of the Argonauts were drowning. And this is comparable to the exhausting discussions with vendors. So some findings will not be acknowledged. This is what we experience. Some findings probably are not security relevant because we don't have an insight into the whole infrastructure, because we found something or we reported something that is really very specific but maybe not applicable in the real manufacturer's environment. So this can happen. So whenever you encounter problems, you can ask for women power. I did lots of coordinated vulnerability disclosures at BSI in various projects and also in my current position. And the BSI is functioning as a coordination body. So I believe in a coordinated versus a responsible disclosure. A responsible disclosure is for me more manufacturer-centered. This is something for me, it's my personal definition that you just, deal with in a corner in the back and you never make anything public. I believe that we as a Federal Office for Information Security function as a neutral body. And the analogy with, let's say, the women power is that Medea possessed the fleece during the journey and she handed it over to json. So this is what we usually do. We enforce vendors, manufacturers to write an advisory as one of the last steps in the whole CVD process in order to disclose the vulnerability publicly. And also Hera, who saved Jason's life by passing through the clashing rocks, is something that we also did, or we regularly do. So sometimes security researchers are heavily attacked by manufacturers and we try to calm them down, and I think we mostly succeed with that. Because sometimes it really helps to have this flag and this eagle and talk to people in a very clear language. So whenever you found or when you reported a vulnerability, any vendor and also the coordination body wants to know whether there are mitigation measures. So here we have an advisory and we have it's called the Song of the Sirens. We will go into that more deeply. And one of the mitigation measures would be tie yourself to the ship and use wax or oral packs for your ears in order to stand the song. So Jason and Odysseus have similar experiences because both of them try to escape the sirens. So what you have to report, or what you can do in a CSAF advisory here is you not only inform about the vulnerability itself, but also about the mitigation measures, the remediations, and also the different product status. So there can be products that are affected, there can be products that are not affected. Which leads me to come to my next slide. Again, the golden ram. And I believe that the golden fleece, what you've seen as JSON format here, is CSAF, the so-called Common Security Advisory Framework, and I have seen at least some of the hands raised up here. So what is CSAF? I talked about mythology in the beginning, and I can tell you that mythology comes true. We have here a jack of all trades. I really like the German word, it's the eierlegende Wollmilchsau, which means like egg-laying, wool and milk-producing piglet. And this is how we, as a federal office, invest tax money. So The Common Security Advisory Framework is an open standard with OASIS. I will come to that a bit later, but this is really crucial for you to know. So CSAF is when mythology comes true. I believe that this format covers most of the demands that we have in vulnerability management and coordinated vulnerability disclosure processes and how we should end them. So CSAF is a machine-readable format. I don't need to tell you that it's easier to transpose machine-readable formats into human-readable, but not vice versa. We have lots of open source tools available. I will talk about that in a few minutes. And the fancy thing about CSAF is that it became an open and international standard with OASIS. And it not only standardizes the format itself, the JSON format, how you travel safely, but it also standardizes the dissemination of information, the automatable retrieval, the consumption, and the comparison of security information. So a pure SBOM, a pure software bill of material, might tell you the composition of your product, of your software, of your hardware, of your software, of whatever. But here you have vulnerability information included. So why CSAF? A little bit back in history, there was a demand for a common vulnerability reporting framework, CVRF, because the world realized that we need common formats. We just heard about it in various previous talks. So how do you receive security information? As a text file? Please raise your hand. As a PDF? Please raise your hand. As any other format? Please raise your hand. You receive it via email? Please raise your hand. You have to type in some weird credentials for any strange supplier, manufacturer, OEM, whatsoever, to get information about. Good. Thank you. Same here. So this demand was so eminent that the world, again, thought about a common format. And basically, CSAF made it. CSAF basically, let's call it like won the tender. So CSAF is the outcome of the Common Vulnerability Reporting Framework. Apart from the standardized format, the automatable retrieval, the consumption, and the subsequent comparison, and therefore it allows you basically to do your risk assessment according to the information therein. CSAF offers you in total 5 profiles. The base profile, rarely anyone uses, to be honest, but it is there. An informational profile. So informational means that you can communicate security information that is not security relevant. You can also use it for incident response. You can also use it for VEX. I will go into that on my next slide. And you can also use it for the classical security advisory. Who of you knows about security advisories, regularly reads security advisories, entertains him or herself with them? Okay, thank you. Who of you is aware of VEX? Great, thank you. So, before we go into VEX, my personal opinion about CSAF, maybe it's not the golden fleece, maybe it is, but I think it's a good starting point. And we will dive into that a bit more deeper. But what I really would like to tell you is that you should identify and automate security information. Because remember this graph, we are expecting more than 30,000 vulnerabilities this year. You really want to do this manual workload? I don't. I'm lazy. Who of you is lazy? Thank you. Okay, no, oh good. I was hoping for more lazy people. So when using CSAF, you reduce the manual workload. I think the manual search, going through all this information, either with the file formats or with the sources you get your security information from, it is super resource intense. And you end up like me in my office doing paperwork. So the question is, do we really, or should we really entertain security people with manual workloads and paperwork? I don't think so. I think you can do IT security and not paperwork. Nonetheless, we've heard that already, there is new legislation upcoming, and this legislation is demanding some more paperwork, but also vulnerability management. So CSAF might not be the complete golden fleece, because you have to have an asset inventory and asset management, a proper one, in order to use CSAF. Because when you receive all this information about a vulnerability version of any library or any software component, you have to know that this component in this version is in your product. In some cases, so for example in the OT environment, it is not like a smart light bulb that, I don't know, might live for more than a year. But you have like water pumps that are my age, that are automated, or like in the medical sector, you have like X-ray machines that sit in a network for more than a decade. So the question is, do you do patches, updates, life cycles? I'm not telling you something new, but I'm just trying to pinpoint on problems that we all have, and CSAF might be a solution. We already heard that some companies try to do security by design or by default, and also the law is demanding it. But to be honest, statistically, in 1,000 lines of code, there are at least 3 vulnerabilities. They might not be security relevant or exploitable, but it's just not avoidable. So, coming to my favorite part of CSAF, the profile VEX. So VEX stands for Vulnerability Exploitability Exchange, and this is exactly the stuff that you need to make your management board happy. Why? We heard that, or at least I heard that in some previous talks, that the management is demanding, so whenever a vulnerability pops up, they ask you, are we affected? What do we have to do? Tell me what are the costs? What do we have to invest? Do we have to protect something? Who do we have to inform? Do we have to talk to the authorities? Do we have to talk to our suppliers, to our subcontractors, and all the cascade? So, alarm, alarm. CSAF allows for VEX, and VEX has 4 different status. Let's talk about these 4 status. So, you can make your management happy with fixed, for sure. You just tell them fixed. Just imagine the log4shell issue. You will see a project later. The backend is written in Go. Cool. I'm known not to be affected. This is 3. Also a very cool thing for the management to tell them like, oh no, we don't have to do anything. So what is critical is telling the management, yes, we are affected, but the good thing is that with VEX, you also communicate an action statement. So you not only publish the security advisory as a CSAF VEX, you also publish something that when you know that you are affected or a certain component is affected, that you have to do a certain action. The 4th point is a bit tricky. This is called under investigation, so your management might terrify you for or regularly, maybe for some weeks, to ask you is there any news on that vulnerability? But I think that VEX is really helpful. It is already implemented in several vulnerability scanners, like for example Trevi. And when you set up a new container image, you scan it and you find vulnerabilities. When you use VEX, you basically find no vulnerabilities because you can see that you use a certain version that you're not affected. So I think it's pretty useful and pretty helpful. So I've talked a lot, and I hope you did not fall asleep. So let's start with the first demo. So here, can also type it. This program is called SecVisogram, and every one of you could write a security advisory using this program. I told you that CSAF is published as an open standard, and this program is actually standard conform. What you see here is that you end up basically with 10 errors when you try to create a new document, and for the sake of time and beauty, I already uploaded two security advisories. And what you can do here is, first of all, you have a form editor where you can add things. I will go into that later. You have a JSON editor. I just heard that JSON is not really readable, but I think it's very convenient to just change things in JSON because you can find them easily, just replace it. The good thing in SecVisogram, especially for the management, there is a preview. So you can look at the advisory in a human-readable format. I will go through that a bit more detailed. So we already talked about this. Let's look at the advisory. So we have an issue with the Argonauts because they pass by the sirens, and those sirens sing sailors to death and cause ships to sink. This is your advisory. But I did a mistake. I used the current version is 1, and this makes no sense because I have another version, which is current version 2. So I could either modify it here and change it to this, and then see that, oh wow, shit, I encountered several errors. So what I wanted to tell you here is that this program is maybe not the most intuitive program. It guides you through the CSAF standard, but it also might create irritation. And I would recommend, when you want to start using SecVisogram, that you try to type in an already existing advisory that you have and see how you can basically copy that into SecVisogram. So let's change the advisory into a CSAFX. We do see that the revision history is wrong. Let's change that. And so let's go back here. I changed it here. It wants version 1, 0, and you end up with an advisory. So we provide, or we offer CSAF workshops where we basically train people how to write advisories, how to do advanced advisories, and how to distribute advisories among various stakeholders. So, because I think it's not very entertaining seeing me clicking and seeing red dots appearing here, so let's go to the second advisory that I prepared, because I think it's a very exhausting and terrifying procedure. Call it now Argo 3. Okay, collapsed. I'm sorry for that. So let's upload it again from the file system. So this is what you can do. You can save advisories, you can upload them, but you can also use templates and everything for that in order to show it. I'm really sorry, I'm connected to my lab server, so it might be a bit laggy. So when I was talking about the remediations that you can communicate with a security advisory, here is one example for that. You have a workaround. We can inform people that they are known to be affected. Think of the management, they want to know that. For the sake of easing it, I left out the CVSS vector, but you can basically type in everything you want. You can give information about another vulnerability, and you can also see the changes when the advisory was released. And this is very important. I told you that CSAF and the CSAF format allows you to do automated risk assessment, automated vulnerability management, because you consume only information that is relevant for you. But you have to have a proper asset inventory in order to know what is relevant to you. But here you can see various different versions, and you can see the changes and act according to that. And when using CSAF properly, and when everyone is using CSAF, would be really cool, wouldn't it? So are we really on the right track with CSAF? So are CSAF advisories really the happy end? Again, the RAM, maybe he's just throwing it into the sea. You can tell me later. So the ancient Greeks did not have fancy digital equipment. They traveled analog, and they navigated using the stars. And I call CSAF not only CSAF, but I call it the CSAF version, because we are not alone, and I think it's a whole ecosystem. So apart from using SecVisogram, for example, or any other fancy or non-fancy tool, and publish security advisories, you have to be aware that there are 3 roles. A CSAF publisher, what I just showed you, just type in an advisory, a CSAF provider, and a CSAF trusted provider. So as already included in the naming, there are certain levels of trust. And when you reach the role of a CSAF trusted provider, this automated retrieval and consumption can be realized because you trust the source you consume your advisories, for example, via Rolly feed from. CSAF is probably one of the solutions, and probably maybe not the only one, to do proper vulnerability management. Because we believe in CSAF, we published recently a technical guidance. This is like a very mild, or not really a mild thing. The security recommendation for security TXT is a mild thing that we can do as a federal office. A technical guideline is like a moderate measure. It's a bit like, I mean, we are on the Argo, but honestly spoken, I don't need slaves and pedals. Maybe you need, but sometimes it's good to have a little bit of a pedal. And this technical guideline that we recently published describes CSAF, and that allows others to, for example, or you, to tell any vendor or anyone like, hey, BSI is recommending it because they recently published a technical guideline. Might help. The upcoming legislation, like NIS2 or the Cyber Resilience Act, I already heard that in several talks, and this is true. You can ask me about that later, during the break, whenever, because I heavily commented on those, especially on Cyber Resilience Act. Vulnerability management and a security contact is demanded by law. There is standardization ongoing, and it might be the case that, for example, CSAF or any other format is then demanded. It is definitely the case that you have to have an SBOM whenever you want to bring products with a digital element, no matter if it's hardware or software, on the European market, and you have to do vulnerability management and reporting. So, vendors, manufacturers, be prepared. I already told you that a standard CSAF 2.0 was born in November 2022. It might not be perfect, but I think it's a good starting point, and CSAF 2.1 is coming. So all the slides are free, you can have them in the end, but I'm happy if you want to take pictures, so don't worry. So whenever you need more information, please visit csaf.io. There is also a bunch of CSAF tools. Everything that we do is open source. Use it, fork it, make it better, raise comments, raise pull requests. We are happy if we can improve these tools and if more people are contributing to that. There is also a CSAF technical committee with OASIS, and they are also very happy if you inform them about things that you would love to have in the CSAF 2.1 standard. Just 2 examples. CVSS 4.0 will be included. TLP 2.0 will also be included. Maybe just some minor changes, but I think very relevant in order to be interoperable with upcoming and current documents. So I was talking about the whole CSAF versum at the technical committee and basically in the world. But I think it's also important to talk about what BSI is doing, so the Federal Office for Information Security. My colleague Thomas and me, yeah, Thomas, give Thomas an applause. Because Thomas is like all the Argonauts in one person. He fought for CSAF, he heavily contributed a lot of his lifetime for the standard, and he made things better. And I think we should have a look into the future and a look into the past. So these are just a selection of various tools that you can find, use, download, make them better, customize them, and they will all help you to build your own CSAF versum, to build your own vulnerability management galaxy. And I will go a bit deeper into my current project, and this is the first time. I will also show a demo in a few minutes. This is the first time I'm talking about this project publicly. It is not ready yet. I expect it to be ready in this fall. So ISTUBA, a wonderful German abbreviation, internes System zum Download und zur Bearbeitung von Security Advisories. So it's an internal demand that we have. So we also have to assess, evaluate security advisories regularly. And this tool will help us to download and evaluate them in a more automated fashion using the CSAF format. What you see here is the current setup of ISTUBA. The backend is in Go. We have a database that is able to deal with bigger files because some companies, for example Red Hat, they publish their advisories in CSAF, and they also go down to 16 years ago. And when you have various versions of a certain thing, you pile up information and you increase the file size enormously. We have an identity and access management with Keycloak, and the whole thing, I will show that in just a minute, is a single-page web app that also people with a not really technical background like me and also our management can hopefully use. We connected various already existing tools like the CSAF distribution and the CSAF web view from previous projects to it. And we also have a setup example that I will show you now. So let's go for ISTUBA. So This is Istobar, at least a first glimpse of what it might look in the end. So this is really not complete. You can, you can visit our GitHub repository and use it and try to implement it. And it will, I can tell you, it will change more or less soon on a daily basis, to be honest. So what you can do with Istobar. I truncated it a little bit because of the sake of a presentation. So here is a landing page. What we internally do is we review, or no, we read advisories, we do write our comments, we review them, and in most cases, to be honest, we archive them. But just in case our management or any vulnerability is popping up again, and our management is asking like, hey, there was an advisory about this component, so we can drag it back and read what we basically assessed. So we can write comments. We also have here, I mean, this is a very truncated list of advisories, but in the, let's say in the real setup, all CSAF advisories from Siemens, from SIG, from Red Hat, our own advisories from the Warning and Information Service that we have are already displayed in Istobar, but for the sake of performance, I truncated it a bit. So let's look into this advisory. So you have seen this Argo advisory, right? You have seen the product tree. You have seen the different vulnerabilities, the Song of the Sirens, that they sing sailors to death. You also read about the remediations and the workaround. And you can always go back, you can see the revision history, and you can write, for example, a comment, please review, for example, and please for review with comments, and then send the comment and leave it here. So it is really primitive these days. You see different roles. So you see here when new advisories come in, you can change them to read or read when you basically process them and assess them. You can send them to review, as said, to archive, and only, so there is a certain role concept that only reviewers and admins can delete advisories. What you can also do, so there is more coming up, you can, for example, compare advisories. You can see a diff, or even no, git diff is not, it is there, yes, sorry. So you can display various diff documents, and you basically can use this information to show the changes either to your management or to whomsoever. There will be a query function. Currently it's only available for experts. So when you, for example, type in BSI, for sure there would be like hundreds of entries in the normal situation. But the real query is or the expert query is currently not working. You can see different states. Here you should see the CVSS scoring and also the version of it. You can see how the advisory was assessed. And there will be statistics, because the management loves colorful things and statistics. And there will also be some more configuration according to your needs. So there will be an admin. The admin can set certain configurations for everyone, and you can do your whatever self-configuration according to your role that you possess. So I'm here a reviewer and an editor like God mode. So coming back, I really hate overcrowded slides, but I love to challenge you at least with one. This is your care package from my talk. There are various repositories that you can visit, that you can contribute to. I don't want to repeat myself, but this is our work, and we are happy if you have good ideas if you want to improve it, if you use it. So, coming back to the Argonauts, how to travel the sea safely with JSON when there are no Argonauts. We have various ideas. Our backend already in Go. There will be a Go library for CSAF. There will be one in Rust probably. Funny part before coming to the end. Some pictures I was not allowed to use for my talk. So these are the restrictions you encounter as a federal institution. So I think that you and me, we are all Argonauts. So we can travel the sea safely. I encourage you to perform security research, to make things better, to make the world a safer place, that you demand and use CSAF, a security TXT, and a coordinated vulnerability disclosure, because when you don't ask for it, you don't get it. Please contribute to CSAF, to our tools, improve them. And I'm pretty sure that when you use, or when any vendor uses CSAF, they will be compliant with current and upcoming legislation. That's it. That's me. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions now, later.
All right.
By mail, by telephone.
Thank you very much, Dina.
Not by advisory.
Any questions? There is one.
Hello. Realistically, for European government agencies, how soon do you think we can enforce CSAF?
You mean the federal agencies?
Yes.
So I can tell you that it's a very good question, and I think this is one problem that I regularly encounter, because I told you I heavily comment on that. I write down CSAF, 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 and ministries, the European Commission, and so on and so far tell me, don't write it into the law. Write it into a standard. So because we have to be technology open. I think this is technology open, but this is my personal opinion. I think that there is a good chance for the standardization for a CRA that CSAF might enter into that. What I can tell you so far is that CISA, our US equivalent, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency in the United States, they are already publishing their advisory in CSAF format, and they are also heavily contributing to that. So it is not a single German BSI style close to death thing, I hope. So it's internationally seen, but the question is how politicians perceive it, and maybe not. It's a very sad story. You comment on something, you say no 100 times, and one time they start to say yes, and you ask yourself, why did I entertain myself with this committee for the last 9 months, when the outcome is the complete opposite of what we recommended. So I can't tell you. What I can tell you is that it is likely that the CRA is entering into force this autumn, and then you have 21 months until you have to do vulnerability reporting, and 36 months until you have to be compliant, fully compliant to CRA.
Thanks.
And standardization, I hope so in 2025, 2026. Yeah.
Anyone else? Questions? Okay, this doesn't seem to be the case. Then thanks again, Dina, for your presentation.
I think there is one question
Was
there.
there one? Oh, yeah. Sorry.
When you are talking about standardization, do you mean a harmonized standard, which is a horizontal standard for all products?
Yes.
And you expect that CSAF will be a requirement in the standard?
At least I'm hoping for that. I'm talking exactly, thank you for clarification, and thank you for this question. I'm talking about a horizontal standardization that is with Working Group 9 now ongoing for CRA. Yeah.
Because I fear that CSAF will not satisfy all customer requirements. I think if you distribute a CSAF advisory to an end customer, it's not really usable. And also for some commercial customers, I think it's not really useful because it's more vulnerability-centric and not so easy to understand and to interpret what to do as a customer.
You're absolutely right. May I just answer to this point? Because I'm absolutely with you. I don't think it's an end-user thing, CSAF. I think it is very suitable for the whole supply chain in order to know which components are affected, but I don't think it's like, I mean, honestly spoken, for my grandmother, it wouldn't make any sense. She's able to use a smartphone so far, but yes, no. And this is also not our goal. We want the supply chain to be more secure in order to be more transparent and to publish in an automated way this information. But for sure with CRA, the end customer and the commercial customers have to be informed, but I don't think that CSAF is the right way for that, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then, but now, thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you.